Okay, very cool. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I am, okay, this is exciting for me. This is a interesting transition, and Amy's heard sort of the evolution of these talks over time as we've evolved our thinking on nutrition and on cancer and on who we are and on what we are, and I'm happy to share that information with you today. And I really just hope that one person hears what I'm saying and um, it is benefited by that, and that ultimately their world is benefited by that. Um, I so I'm Dr. Mark Hunter. I'm a GYN oncologist, and that's very briefly what that means is that I see patients, I detect cancer in women, we identify it, then we use the most modern robotic surgical platform to go inside someone, remove that cancer, and then after that cancer is removed, it's also my job to act as the medical oncologist, which means I switch hats and then I start thinking about systemic ways of treating cancer in that patient. So that then becomes a question of chemotherapy. Do we place a port so we can deliver chemo directly into the circulation? Immunotherapy, biologic therapy, hormone therapy, and if they need it, radiation therapy. And so that is really the beginning of my understanding of nutrition and cancer and all of that put into the sort of basket of biology, not just human biology, but animal biology and plant biology. And that has enabled me to have a specific viewpoint on these topics. And I hope that I'm able to pass along that viewpoint to you today. And I do hope that again, that you benefit from this information. I do want to express my appreciation for EquipmentShare. I do have an interesting connection with EquipmentShare. In 2015, a group of us got together and joined the Columbia Startup Weekend, and we pitched an idea, a concept for delivering medical information to patients, essentially in the form of app development. And I do want to say that EquipmentShare won Columbia Startup Weekend the year before, and they were really the shining star of that organization, and raised up as an example of hope and excitement, and what can happen when a group of people gets together with a single solitary mission to change the world and to change the way that we do things. And EquipmentShare has done that, and over the last 7 years, we've watched it rise up, and we see the labels everywhere. We see the equipment on the sides of the road, and it's always exciting to see those things because we know where it started and what it means. And what it means is that a community is getting together. Disconnected companies are working together to use the same resources, to share resources and to cooperate with each other in a way that makes instead of 3 pieces of equipment sitting idle, 1 piece of equipment is being used regularly across multiple platforms, multiple construction sites, multiple companies, and it is a unity. And EquipmentShare is an example of unity that I think is important for our entire world, to see and to be a part of. And I think that's part of the success, and the other part is just that you're there, that you have done these things, that you have worked to make this type of corporate cooperative sharing an important part of our economic infrastructure moving forward, and really the future of commerce and of construction and of cooperation. So my goal today is to talk to you about nutrition and talk to you about cancer and to talk a little bit about quantum mechanics and maybe a little bit about black holes. And I did suggest that in the outline, and hopefully that might have sparked some curiosity for you. So I am just going to give you a little bit of a background about how I see the human body, because I do interact with my patients on a minute-by-minute basis. I this morning sat down with two patients who have cancer and are waging this. We call it a war, but I do want to talk about why I don't love that term, or a fight, and I don't love that term. But nonetheless, I sat down with two patients I've been treating for several years about what we are going to do in this next phase. Tumor markers are rising, the cancer is starting to grow back. What are we going to do to rid this patient's, my friend's body of cancer? And I do see that person as a whole person. I don't want to say that I'm a deconstructionist. That means that I see it really just a whole as the sum of its parts. And a crane might be an example. A crane has pulleys and an engine and a steering wheel and a million different parts, thousands, literally thousands of moving parts. But you look at that, and in equipment share, you say that's a crane, and it's labeled, as a crane. It's not labeled as a whole of its parts. But you can't really practice medicine like that, and you certainly can't practice oncology like that. You have to see the person as actually a collection of parts, and what are those parts? And this is important to the conversation of nutrition and cancer, and certainly in quantum mechanics. What are we? I cannot begin to pass on information about nutrition, about cancer, about aging, about health, without first at least talking about what we are. And if you haven't spent much time thinking about what you are, I would encourage you to do that. If you haven't spent much time learning about it, I encourage you to spend some time. We are a collection of matter, and really that matter is in the form of cells and acellular material. That's things floating around our bloodstream that aren't collected in cells. How many cells are we? We're 100 trillion cells. That's an enormous amount of cells if you think about it. What does 100 trillion look like? There is there's really no correlate. You can look at the stars, and those numbers are that high, but really nothing on Earth is that high. Even the population of ants aren't 100 trillion on our planet. So you are the most sophisticated, most complex collection of matter in the known universe. That's just a fact, and that is because you're 100 trillion cells. Now, 30 trillion of those cells are human, and most of those are you. There are actually cells that are not you floating around your bloodstream. If you are listening today and you have had a child, for instance, your child's living cells are still floating around in your bloodstream, even if that child was delivered 30 years ago. So there are cells that are floating around inside your bloodstream that are human and aren't you. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. It really does blow my mind to think about that. Now, the other sort of the majority for sure of the 30 trillion cells that are floating around that make up you are you and have your genetics and epigenetics, which is combination of genetic switches. What are the other 70 trillion cells? And the answer is all kinds of stuff. Some are fungus, some are bacteria, some are multicellular organisms. So your skin has mites that they walk around on our skin, and they are very complex multicellular organisms. Of that 100 trillion cells, 100 billion of them are neurons. And so those neurons they're basically quantum supercomputers. The best information that we have is that a single neuron is a quantum supercomputer. That is far more complex than anything that we understand. And we're just beginning to scratch the surface on what a neuron is actually capable of. Now, when you combine 100 billion neurons, then you are the result. You are what's capable when 100 billion neurons get together and try to work together to solve problems. And EquipmentShare is a great example of that. 100 billion neurons here, 100 billion neurons there, 100 billion neurons there, and there, and there, and there, and all of a sudden you've totally changed the world, and you've helped our planet tremendously. And I do think that EquipmentShare, again, is an important part of that. So where does this fit into how I treat a patient, for instance, how I see patients? Well, it really translates into my view of human behavior. And so how do I feel about human behavior? I think that human behavior is something that is programmed in many ways. So we are given a complete blueprint of DNA, of genetic material, from conception, and that from that start, the switches are being turned on and off from everything that we're getting, every sound, every motion, everything we touch, everything we feel, from the minute we're born to the minute we die. Every little bit of information is being collected by our system and integrated into action, into a plan, into something that essentially a collection of quantum supercomputers where the input comes in and out comes some type of process. And today that process might be clerical work or fixing a crane or helping a company by delivering a piece of equipment they didn't have to purchase. That emergent phenomenon that is occurring within EquipmentShare is the same kind of emergent phenomenon that's happening within you right now. 100 trillion cells all working together to make you feel like you're a unit, an individual, a person, that you have relevance and reference and autonomy and
consciousness.
This used to be a mystery. Really, even just 100 years ago, we just thought that this was magic, that people were a result of magic. And now we have developed tools that enable us to peer really into the human body. And I use these tools every day. I use tools that look in the brain, MRI, to look at even individual neurons, but certainly patterns, circuitry within the brain that enable us to track thoughts, memories, and even decisions before our conscious brain accepts them. I'm sorry, I just looked at there's a spotted baby deer outside the window. It always captures my attention. So what does, again, what does this mean for cancer, and where does cancer come in to the picture here? So again, I said that I have a little bit of a problem with this notion of a fight. Why do I shy away from the word fight when I talk about cancer, both the prevention of cancer and the treatment of cancer? Why is fight a problem for me just from a definition standpoint? And it really boils down to the fact that a small population of cells within us, within a patient, has undergone some series of genetic mutations. All of our cells are always undergoing genetic mutations, and what causes cancer? Why all of a sudden does a group of these of your 30 trillion human cells? Why does a handful of them just start to misbehave and start to take over and really pollute and ultimately kill off organs and other parts of the body? Why is this happening? And the answer is we understand it more and more from a molecular basis. Every day we understand these more and more, and these imaging technologies are a good way for us to to begin to understand that. Basically, essentially what happens is there's some environmental pressure that causes the cells to undergo some mutation, some reason to become something different, some reason to mutate and to become a problem for this organism. Now, again, I see the human body as an ecosystem. I don't see the human body as, this is Chuck and this is Dave and this is Michelle. these are these are entire, I call it, the City of a Thousand Planets, really, which is a movie, but the concept is correct. When we take a magnifying glass or a microscope and we look closer and closer and closer at us and what we are, what we find is essentially a haphazard collection of these cells, all trying to work together, and in the sake of cancer, failing at that. And so a small collection of cells undergoes some mutation. That mutation confers a survival advantage. And then you've heard of this concept, invasive species. Invasive species are ones that have a biological advantage for survival, and so they begin to take over and take resources from everything and everyone else. Cancer is an invasive species that occurs inside the body. It has a mutational advantage, and that advantage allows it to spread and ultimately, destroy everything in its path. So, what does that have to do with nutrition? I mean, the answer is really that it has everything to do with nutrition. It tends to sort of boggle my mind, and this does, that patients are becoming smarter and smarter. And so when a cancer is diagnosed now, they don't just take my word for it that this chemotherapy or that chemotherapy is an appropriate choice for them. They go online and they start to read about it, and then they read about the side effects, and they read about all kinds of stuff, and then sometimes they come to me and they say, I don't want that. I don't want that poison. And so we have to talk through that about why it's important, why we are going to poison them, and what happens if they decide not to do that. And then after that conversation, I usually say, so, are you heading home now or something like that? And they'll say, no, we're going to Golden Corral. Okay. This is where things run into trouble for me, because we spend exquisite amounts of time programming and deciding what exact to the milligram molecules we're going to put into this person's body, and then they go to wherever they're going to eat for lunch, and they inevitably do, and they eat and they grab a cheeseburger and maybe an order of fries with cheese and chili and and a Coke. So I'm not opposed to that. I do love food. I enjoy food very much, and I do believe that food is one of our great pleasures in life, and one of the most valuable things. Obviously, it keeps us alive. It gives us sustenance, and so food is important. But we don't care what we put into our bodies, and we don't research what we put into our bodies, and we don't ask any questions. We are, again, programmed from birth to eat a specific way, and that sticks with us through the rest of our lives, while more and more and more programming comes in. And again, it's that programming, that information. We are a collection of information. And that information ultimately translates into action. We take in information from our world, and we output information to our world in the form of action. And so we're programmed to think a certain way and eat a certain way. And I was programmed to do the exact same thing. I was programmed. I grew up in Los Angeles. I have basically a middle class home. And our food was the standard American diet. And so the standard, and I'll take that even one step earlier, when I asked when I talked to my mom about breastfeeding. I was born in 1970, and I was not breastfed, and my brother, born 7 years earlier, was not breastfed. He was given formula. My sister, born 5 years earlier, was given formula. And when I asked my mom, because going through medical school and in the year 2000, 2010, we now understand that, and most of you probably think this is a no-brainer, that breastfeeding is clearly the healthy choice. If there's an option between breastfeeding and formula, and breastfeeding is at all an option, it's clearly the better option here. That wasn't true in the 1970s. And in the 1970s, there were huge ad campaigns teaching moms that that science created formulas, and that those formulas are far superior to the ability of humans to make milk that's appropriate for their human children. And so what did they do in that scenario? And the answer is they took cow's milk and they freeze dried the cow's milk and they put it into powder, and they packaged it. They marketed it. They convinced an entire generation of people that this is an appropriate way to grow in early development. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is it turned out to be patently false. This notion that freeze-dried cow's milk was better than human milk for a human baby turned out to be a really tragic, not just misunderstanding, but really relatively misleading conspiracy, essentially, a cowspiracy, if you will, which I think is a movie. Why isn't it true? How is that not true, that sterile, scientifically formulated milk is not better for us? And the answer is that it just hasn't borne out in all of our rigorous scientific discipline. That is, our investigation of children fed breast milk versus children, fed formula, again, cow's milk versus human milk, cow's milk versus human milk. That's what we're talking about. And it's clear that children raised on human milk, on milk that's appropriate for a human baby, improves IQ, improves overall health, improves quality of life, and this is, at this moment, we're still fighting against the misinformation campaigns that would seek to convince people that cow's milk is more appropriate for a human baby than human milk. That is a powerful lobby and a powerful marketing engine, and it is driven by a multi-billion-dollar dairy industry and a multi-billion-dollar meat industry. So that brings me to the topic of animals and humans and how we live together, and what our world looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means for us today. So we are taught again from birth that it is we are given a belief that we are the dominant species on this planet, and there is no question that we are. We have evolved to the place of being the dominant species on this planet. And like the invasive species of cancer, we have spread very, very quickly, and we've essentially destroyed everything in our path. Almost everything that human beings touch gets altered in some way, in some unrecoverable and damaging way. We, and when I say we, I mean my wife Emily and I started researching on this concept of cancer and nutrition in 2014 to ask the question, does nutrition actually matter in cancer patients, and does it make a difference? And what we uncovered was that there are definitely patterns of eating that make a difference. And so we started teaching people about going low carb, and Amy certainly heard plenty of discussions about being low carbohydrate and eating low carbohydrate foods and approaches. You've probably, and that was 2014, and since then you've heard about this ketogenic concept and this ketogenic movement. What was the problem with a ketogenic approach to the fight of and the treatment of cancer patients or epilepsy, where it first began? And the answer is the problem was that people were dying from atherosclerosis. That people were using, including parents trying to control epilepsy in their kids with ketogenic diet, would give them meat meat and cheese. Meat and cheese and animal products were the proteins and fats that they thought of to use without necessarily embracing this concept of plant nutrition and plant-based fats and proteins. And the kids got disease in their carotid arteries in their 20s. And so the problem with, again, ketogenic diets is that animal proteins and animal fats clog our arteries and kill us. There, I said it. So we are not actually designed to consume animals. We think we are, and we've been taught that since birth. There's no doubt about that. And I am not here to convince you otherwise. I am just here to plant a small seed somewhere in those 100 billion neurons that takes hold and begins to investigate this on your own. Don't take my word for any of this. This is all, you are, again, the most complex collection of matter in the known universe. You have the most superior intelligence of anyone anywhere in the universe. Use that superior intelligence and begin to investigate this and ask the following questions. Do my teeth look like cat teeth? Do they look like dog teeth? Or do they look like a cow's teeth? Does my jaw move side to side like an herbivore or only up and down like a carnivore? Are my intestinal lengths appropriate for plant-based nutrition or appropriate for eating the rotting flesh of animals? And the answer is I'm in there every day. I'm in the intestines, pulling pieces of cancer off of those very intestines that were never designed, never evolved to eat meat. But we've been convinced by a series of lies from these massive industries that engage in animal agriculture to convince us that this is our birthright and that this is sound scientific nutrition principles, and it is incorrect. How do we know that? How do we know that we are not designed to eat animals? Well, teeth are one. Again, I do not have teeth look up the pacu fish, P-A-C-U, and look at their teeth. They have weirdly human teeth, and they're herbivores. They eat nuts and seeds and things. Look at giraffes, look at cows, look at all the herbivores. You'll see they all have teeth like mine. That wasn't the reason that I personally decided to give up eating animals or anything with animal in it or anything manufactured by animals. And that may be a hard pill for some people to swallow, that notion. Why, as a cancer surgeon and a medical oncologist, did I decide, after reviewing all of the literature that I could get my hands on, and you can do that too, PubMed.gov, P-U-B-M-E-D, PubMed.gov. Don't take my word for any of this. You're a collection of quantum supercomputers. Go on PubMed.gov and put vegan in, or put plant-based in, and put cancer, and put aging, and put inflammation. Start from the head to the toe. Put in plant-based and brain, and then plant-based and lungs, plant-based, heart, cardiovascular, gut, stomach. From the tip of your head to the bottom of your toes, research anything that science has to tell us about plant-based nutrition and about the consumption of animals. And what you'll find, if you give it an honest assessment, is that we are not designed to eat animals. And we've been fooled, and it's killing us. So why did I decide to change? It wasn't really just the science. It wasn't the science of human nutrition. It wasn't a human-centric approach that enabled me, that caused me to go and research this myself and decide enough is enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to sanction the torture of innocent and sentient animals for pleasure, not for health, not for nutrition, not for sustenance, not for long life, shorter life, just for pleasure. Just because I enjoyed, and believe me, I did. I enjoyed ribs. We went to all you can eat crab twice a month, and we ate as much crab as we could get our hands on. We gave talks about meat and cheese to hundreds, thousands of people. We were heavily ingrained in that culture. And what changed? What switch just flipped in us? It started honestly with YouTube. I mean, we were already bathed in the science. We understood it. We ignored the science. We ignored the notion that animal proteins are toxic to us. We ignored the science that animal fats clogged our arteries and would kill us young. We ignored that. But what we couldn't ignore were the animals. YouTube began to provide us with obvious evidence that animals are sentient, obvious evidence that they are loving, emotional, kind, empathetic, that they can connect with humans and with other animals in a way that is indistinguishable from the way one human connects to another. We ignored that for as long as we could, until we really couldn't ignore it anymore. We had seen too much. We had learned too much. We began to dig into the science of animal neurobiology. Functional MRI has allowed us to peer into not the structure of human brains and of animal brains, but the function. A functional MRI allows us to peer into the thoughts of humans and animals. And what we discovered was that there wasn't any difference. There was no difference between the way a human thinks and the way an animal thinks, other than slight differences in pathways and slight differences in structure. The thoughts are the same. And that was a hard pill to swallow. Very hard to read that literature and begin to understand that animals feel pain, loss, sadness, depression. They grieve their dying. They grieve their lost children. They count. They plan. They consider the future. They like touch. They respond to massage. There aren't any. If you think that animals are nothing more than dumb machines, give your dog a massage. Just rub your dog's shoulders or your dog's back or your cat. And here in this house, it would be the dogs, the cats, the ferrets, each other, the spotted deer that's eating the tree outside right now. We've tried this with goats and cows and pigs, and everyone loves a massage. And then after learning the neuroscience behind the similarities between humans and nearly every other species, but quite specifically the species that we consume, then we were sort of faced with the reality that we had to watch those videos that nobody wants to watch. We had to. There's a YouTube video called the greatest speech you'll ever hear, and the guy's name is You're of Sky, which will bring me back to quantum mechanics in a minute. Gary You're of Sky, and it's he's got an hour-long talk, and I would write it down. I'd watch it. If you're that one person in this group, when I look over to my right and I see maybe 20 people are listening, if you're that one person who's been thinking about this, and maybe you saw the video of the cow that runs out and plays with a ball, or the pig that counts to 10, or any one of 1,000 videos that is indefensible. Go watch that talk. It's only an hour, and it has 4 minutes of slaughterhouse video in it. If you've never watched any video like that, if you've never seen anything that takes place inside a slaughterhouse, watch it. It's only 4 minutes. You can probably forward through the talk. It's not worth it. You should watch it. Can you continue to give your dollar bill to that process? When you see that baby chicks, now baby chicks can count to 5, and a human baby can't count to 5. But baby chicks are born one color if they're male and one color if they're female, so that they can go down an assembly line, be sorted by color, and if you're male and you have the male color, you're put right into a blender, literally right into a blender, and ground up because you can't lay eggs. I'm getting to quantum mechanics in a minute. It's important. These videos are, they're impossible to unsee. Once you have given yourself to that, once you've committed to 4 minutes of investigation into what's happening to your dollar when it leaves your wallet and goes to these industries and gets slapped down on a desk and contributes to the torture and dismemberment to a sentient being that's alive while it's being dismembered. There's no such thing as a humane slaughterhouse. They don't exist. There's no such thing as a happy cow that's in the dairy industry. That's a lie. That's a line that's been fed to you to keep you sedated. Are you sedated by morphine? Are you sedated by a drug that they put in milk and in cheese? That's cow's milk, cow's cheese. Yeah, you are. It's called casein, and it's a morphine derivative. It's the reason baby cows stick to their moms, because they're addicted. They're addicted to the milk. So where does quantum mechanics come into all this? We started researching quantum mechanics because we met someone that told us that quantum mechanics would be the answer to cancer, and we didn't quite realize what, essentially what that meant until we spent about 5 years, and really now it's been 6-7 years researching what quantum mechanics is and how relativity and black holes fit into all of that. If you don't know, you should just, we live in an age now where you can learn anything. And again, I will say that you are smart, the most impressive and complex collection of matter in the known universe. You are capable of learning these things on your own. Quantum mechanics is, at this point now, you can't ignore them anymore because quantum computers is being talked about everywhere. Quantum computers is going to be revolutionary. And of course, black holes are being talked about everywhere as well. Quantum mechanics is unmistakable and inarguably the substrate, the structure of our universe. It is what describes how everything works everywhere. And quantum mechanics tells us that we are inescapably attached to the animals that we consume. It's called quantum entanglement, and what it means is that when I give $1 to buy a hamburger, and of course it's $8, if I give $8 to buy a hamburger, I have connected myself to that suffering and dying cow. A cow raised from birth, the artificial insemination of a cow, taken from the mom at birth so that the mom can give milk for my cheese, also on the burger. That I'm actually connected through space and time to that animal. That's what quantum mechanics says. It does not fit with human intuition. That's why quantum mechanics is so weird. And Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. And he thought, this is garbage. Quantum mechanics can't exist because spooky action at a distance can't be real. And he was wrong. It's the one huge error that Einstein made. He founded quantum mechanics with his mathematics and then spent a good portion of his life denouncing it. But here we are in 2021 building quantum computers. It is absolutely a fundamental process of the universe that we are connected through space and time with everything and everyone. But we are specifically connected to the suffering of a sentient animal that we have paid someone else to torture, dismember, grind up, and put in every single meal we consume. Everyone. It's almost impossible not to get animal when you're shopping in the store for it, specifically trying to avoid it. It's in everything. It's in every cookie. It's in every loaf of bread. It's in places it doesn't need to be. And we now know this because we spent the last 2 years trying to avoid it. So we haven't given up on cookies, and we haven't even given up on hamburgers. We just eat plant-based burgers now. We've decided that we're not going to be entangled with with the sanctioned torture of animals anymore. We're just not going to do that. And so we've decided we're going to avoid it. And what have we done? We have essentially created a diet that is devoid of that. A diet of love, a pattern of eating that is loving and kind and nurturing and allows us to flourish from a health standpoint, while not supporting industries that torture, again, sentient beings that from functional MRI standpoint think and feel and love and hurt and cry and weep, just like we do, just like humans. Again, when it comes to cancer and human nutrition, I'll state this again. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence that plant-based nutrition prevents aging, prevents cancer, prevents inflammation, and prevents disease. There is an overwhelming mountain of evidence, and I've given you the key. I've given you the key to the kingdom, the key to knowledge. And it's called PubMed.gov. It has all the quantum mechanics articles. Look up quantum entanglement. It has all the plant-based nutrition articles. Look up plant-based nutrition. It has all the cancer articles. It talks about fat. It talks about protein. It talks about carbohydrates. You're intelligent. Go find these things. Seek them out. You can't unhear the words that I'm saying, and you can't unsee those videos, and you can't unlearn those pieces of information. I tell people that charred meat is a cigarette for your colon, and it's true. I want to paint that image of a cigarette in your colon, and I don't have a cartoon for it, but it would probably look like a cigarette coming out of your butt. But it's true of animal products in general. They are toxic to us. They are toxic in every measure, everywhere. When you decide that you're not going to consume these things anymore, when you decide that you're going to live differently, then everything changes. Things start to evolve within you that enable you to love in a different way, to no longer live a hypocritical life where you decide, I'm going to love and support and nurture anyone that's like me. Anyone that's my color, my size, anyone that's from my tribe, my nation, my species. when you decide that, maybe all species deserve our love, our support, and our protection, then something begins to change. And that change translates into health. The data is unmistakable about that. That you are eternally connected to the animals that you consume. We've got a lot more to say about this, and on an individual basis, morsel for morsel. I know that our crowd has thinned a little bit, and I appreciate that. These are busy. This is a busy time, and this is a hard message. I do want to take a few minutes and answer some questions, but I encourage you to watch the greatest speech ever given by Yorovsky. It's Yorovsky, but I like Yorovsky better because it reminds me that we are all connected across space and across time. And Cowspiracy, and just spend some time looking at videos of cows and pigs and chickens and their intelligence and their emotions, and how they play and how they mourn their babies that were ripped from them so that we could have milk in our coffee and in our cereal that didn't need to be made with animals, but is anyway, and for no good reason. I should have started with this. These are not the opinions of EMU. These are my own. And I deeply appreciate what EquipmentShare is doing. I do believe that this message is appropriate to deliver to them first, to you first, because you're a model of what it means to be part of a community, to offer innovative and unique solutions to complex problems that no one has ever thought of before. The human race is marvelously and really miraculously inventive and innovative. I can tell you that for 2 years, I have had no need of steak or eggs or milk. I have cow's milk. I'd like you to look up the term somatic cell count, and in that you'll realize that there is an eyedropper full of pus in every glass of milk. That's the allowable amount of pus. And why is there pus in cow's milk? Because we hook them to machines and they get infected in mastitis. The good news is that our world is changing, and the kids are leading us in that direction, because kids understand this. When you were 2, you didn't have the desire to chase after a squirrel and tear it apart with your bare hands and consume it whole. You would have never thought to have done that. You would have just protected the squirrel against someone trying to do that. If you think that we're meant to eat meat, put a 2-year-old in a crib with an apple and a bunny and see which one it decides to eat. I am deeply grateful for EquipmentShare and for the way you've inspired me. Every time I see that EquipmentShare logo, I'm inspired. I'm inspired to try to change the world and to make a contribution to it. I'm excited to have known and been watching this company, for the last 7 years. I'm deeply proud of what you guys have done. You should be immensely proud of your contribution. Again, not just to our community, but to our world. I know we're just about out of time, but we do have a few minutes for questions. And you can email me anytime. My email is huntermd@gmail.com. Email me if you have questions. None of this stuff is written down by me, but it exists in volumes. So I appreciate the time. I really do. This is again a tough message to deliver, and it's a tougher one to hear. And I know that some of you are eating lunch right now, and listen, I've consumed an enormous amount of animals in my time. This isn't about shame. This isn't about guilt. This is just about change. And that's what EquipmentShare is all about, change. So I'm going to stop there. We'll continue to make this, an interactive thing, and we'll continue to give these talks. And anybody that is willing to listen, I'm willing to continue to talk about this. So I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions about anything, it's true that I haven't talked about black holes, but you can. I'm just going to throw this one out there. The decisions that you make were programmed and black holes are the proof of that. And black holes are unmistakable, undeniable proof that the decisions you make came from your environment, and those include the decisions you make regarding food. That's another talk for another day. Okay, so with 3 minutes or 4 minutes left, and I've got all the time in the world. I know you don't, but and of course that's not true. But does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff, or about anything else? Quantum mechanics, GYN, cancer, relativity, animal welfare, and neurobiology.
Anybody have anything?
Okay, well, again, I'm really grateful that you gave us this time today. I appreciate you. Contact me, but more importantly, look and research and embrace and let this seed grow. Water it. Just give it a little bit of water, teeny, tiny little bit of water, and it will grow into something, that can and will change your life. Thank you very much again for the time. I appreciate each one of you. I hope that you all have a wonderful, a safe, a healthy year. Take care.